Hi, I am Tiffany and I am with Promote Black Authors. And today I have a special guest, author Phila Scales. Now, your book is called They Call Me Mr. Scales. And so I'm super excited to hear more about this. Can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, my name is Phil Scales, and I'm a retired professional orchestra conductor.
Wow. So, a little bit about your background. Can you provide a brief overview of the book called They Called Me Mr. Scales?
Yeah, the book is about a young black kid who had a dream of becoming a professional conductor, orchestra conductor. And it's the trials and tribulations the man myself had to go through to achieve that dream.
So, if I were to ask you, when did you what at what age did like I'm thinking maybe God gave you the dream. At what age was the dream placed into you that you were like, "Aha, this is what I'm going to do."
5 years old. And
Wow.
what placed that in my mind is 5 years old back in the day, I used to get up and watch the old cartoons. And the old cartoons, I can remember Bugs Bunny, Jason Elmer Fudd around the barbershop trying to cut that one little curl, and they're playing the barber, the Seville, and I'm wondering, where is this music coming from? Because in the late 50s, early 60s, we didn't have classical radio stations. We only had three TV channels, and they were black and white. And so that was my start. And then it wasn't until I got into fourth grade I started playing violin, and that kind of opened up that classical world to me.
That's amazing. So, being that I am a neuroscience researcher, I often want to ask, like, do you see things like some people see like music notes and things? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I have a special little talent. I see music in colors.
I was going to ask that.
Conductors, it's been established that 1 out of 50 conductors will actually see music in color. And I never thought anything about it. I talked to my students, and I was always talking about colors to them, and they were looking at me like I'm strange because they didn't see the same colors I did. But that was something we worked through, and it was very exciting to have that.
That's amazing. So, if I were to ask you what is your favorite color, meaning what's your favorite tune or your note, what would that be?
My favorites would be blue, red, and brown. Brown is my rich, deep chocolate. In fact, I always tell the kids, I say, this passage has got to be so chocolate and so rich that I'm a diabetic, that this should just send me into shock. And the kids, they really, get off on that.
I love that. So, because you see in color, and I know like there's another musician, Alex Isley. She actually, when she was young, I believe she's one of the Isley brothers' children. She sees things in color, and the way she explains it is like this really bright thing that's happening in front of her, like art is being painted and stuff. Is that what you see when you're seeing the color?
Oh, absolutely. And when I'm in front of my orchestra, the conductor, the music comes through the conductor. And what I brought to the podium was passion and excitement. And through that passion, as I'm going through with my orchestra, it's just like flowing colors all over the orchestras, the reds and all that coming in with the attacks and all that. So it was something that was something I always had. And I was kind of twofold too, because I'm also an athlete.
Wow.
I don't know if they know, but I went to college on a football, baseball, music scholarship,
Oh, wow.
which was an unusual talent. And then my senior year in college, I end up becoming winning the senior athlete of the year, and also I'm inducted into my college Hall of Fame for baseball. So I was
Oh,
kind of a three-peat guy, and with the music and athletics.
what made you choose like so for us, right? They typically push us towards sports and athletics because they think like that's our strong suit. What was the thing that pushed you the opposite way towards music?
Music was just something I really enjoyed doing. And sports in my community, I grew up in Pittsburgh, And in my community, sports, especially football, was king. Everyone in the community played sports. So, and my brothers, they all played. So I played sports also. But music, I had a thing set up to where at a young age, I knew and what I wanted was my athletic ability to get me into college,
Yeah.
and my music ability to get me into society.
Oh,
That
wow.
was the plan, that was the dream, and that was always something that was going forward with me. And regardless of what the setbacks were at, I just stayed focused on that path.
That's amazing. So what led you to put this in a book?
The thing that, I'd never thought about writing a book, but the thing that caught my attention was the things that were happening in 2014 through 2017 in the United States. And basically, that was the riots we were going through, the Ferguson effect, Big Mike, and all that. And I was watching the younger generations, where they were going into the schools and they wanted to have safe places and different things like that. And I'm going, oh my God, I walked through a whole world where would walk into a room and I was the only black man in that room as a
Mm,
classical conductor. But I walked in that room with it seared across my forehead, judge me by the content of my color, not by
yeah.
the, excuse me, judge me by the content of my character and not by the color of my skin. And it just seems like during those 3 years, we were going somewhat backwards. And so
Yeah.
what I want to do is just basically put my story out there, the trials and tribulations that I had to go as a black man to make that succeed. And I went unafraid. There was times, and that's what my book is about, the journeys, the setbacks, moving forward, moving backwards, and then finishing in your goal and your desires.
So, how did you approach the writing process? And when I ask that, I want to ask it in full context. Because you're a musician, did you when you started writing, did you have to have music in the background to help motivate the pen to the paper, or was it something that you were just able to do? And what did that look like for you?
Well, I did it the hard way. I just started writing. I knew what I wanted to say, and it was just flowing out, and it was flowing out so fast that most people would have been at the computer typing it all down. But I can write cursive quicker than I can type. I wrote the whole book out in cursive.
Oh,
And
wow.
after I got it done, then I went to the computer and put everything down and sent it through a Grammarly and all that. It was kind of funny. That was my first time working with Grammarly. And I got so nervous because they kept correcting things. And I thought at any second, Grammarly was going to write back to me, did you ever have an English class? Well, got through the process and got it edited and all that. So the editing process is the gruel, not the
Yeah.
writing. I didn't have any problem writing when I wanted. It was just everything was just here, so fresh in my mind that it was just writing into paper.
I understand that. So were there any specific people or things that influenced or authors that inspired your story as you were writing it and as you were going through the editing process? Because I'm pretty familiar with that. So what did that look like for you?
Well, the processing, I edited. My wife helped me edit. My wife had wrote a book also, so she's part author also. But the thing that kept me moving and on my book and on my career is PMA. PMA, positive mental attitude. I
Mm,
had back in the early 80s, I had two gurus that I went through their PMA classes. W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone used to be the head of a combined insurance, but he owns the Aon building in Chicago. And he taught all his agents what PMA meant, positive mental attitude. And I had that class with him and also Norman Vincent Peale. Norman Vincent Peale says something that has stuck with me all my life. What the mind of man can conceive and believe, then you can achieve.
absolutely.
Very powerful. Very
I
powerful.
love that.
Yep.
So, can you describe the importance of the book? Like, what is something that you would want your audience to see that would be like, I really need to get this book in my hands? Like, what do you think is so important in your story that is like
Well,
this matters?
It's how a man who had a dream, and I took that dream where people usually wouldn't think a man would go. I was in South Dakota for 16 years. I lived in a town with 25,000 people in the town, but there were only two black men. And we
Mm.
looked nothing alike, and half the people couldn't tell us apart. Robert had four kids. I had four kids. Robert's oldest son's name was Philip. My first name is Philip. Too many variables. So it was that type of thing that had to keep me motivated and doing the things I needed to do. I had a great rapport with my students that helped me build this journey along the way. And again, my dream was to become a professional conductor, orchestra conductor, which I did, but I also took that one step further because in South Dakota, I also started a symphony orchestra. So I was conducting one symphony orchestra that I was hired, and the other symphony orchestra I started from scratch with the bylaws, the rules, the board, and all that. And they were very successful for 10 years until I left South Dakota. So I
Wow.
was very ingrained in what I wanted to do. I set up goals for my students, and we walked through that process, and we made it into a reality.
I love that. How did you come up with the title of the book, Mr. Scales, and what does it signify?
Well, when I first started teaching, and Scales is my last name, and the title, when I first started teaching, I was teaching in Hutchinson, Kansas. My first job, I had a junior high orchestra with 15 kids from seventh grade to ninth grade. And I had four feeder schools with 40 schools going into it. Once I knew what my dream and goal was, now I'm starting to teach. And I had to be real with myself. Why should someone hire Phil Scales as a professional orchestra conductor? What have I done? I haven't done anything, but what do I need to do to get on that track? And I sat down, I was definitely honest with myself, looking at myself in the mirror. There's three things I need to do right away and very quickly. I need to learn how to be a master teacher. I need to learn how to be a master recruiter of strings because that's what I did. And I had to be a master motivator of students. And
Yeah.
in 4 years, I took that junior high orchestra with 15 kids and I built that in 4 years to 140 string players. And in
Wow.
the grade schools, we went from 40 kids to 280 string players. So then what they did is they moved me up to the high school orchestra position, which made me the first black high school orchestra teacher in Hutchinson, Kansas. Also, I was coaching high school football. I'm teaching orchestra and I'm coaching high school football. And that kind of set the stage and opened it up. Now, the funny thing with that story is once they moved me up to the high school orchestra, they hired this lady out of KU to take my position at the junior high. And I took her under my wing and we worked together because she was my feeder school. And we've been married for 41 years.
Oh,
My wife.
I love that. I asked you because if someone was to see the book, often you think of Scales and you really just connect it to music. Like
Exactly.
that.
But and how I got to the title was that during those 4 years, I was called everything in that town, the colored orchestra conductor, the black guy, this. But after those 4 years, and all those kids are now carrying strings around and Mr. Scales, I became Mr. Scales. And
Wow.
that's how I
So,
made
what do
it.
you hope the readers get out of this book, take away from this book? Like,
Oh,
what
I
is
just
the.
like to see that a man who had a journey, a man who had a goal, and he fought all the odds to get to that goal. And a lot of times when a black man is in a position where there's not a lot of black people in that position, we always get that feedback that don't worry, the black community has your back. Well,
Yeah.
in South Dakota, number one, there wasn't a black community in South Dakota. And number two, the black community is not sold 100% on classical music. And that's
Right.
just the way it is. And so that was my dream. And to be able to do that, have a dream of your own and go forward and let no one deter you from what you're going to do. And these are the same messages that I taught thousands of kids in my teaching.
Yes, that's so good. Are there any specific moments and passages in the book that are particularly that you're proud of, that resonate with you, that you're like, this is huge?
Well, there's a lot of things in the book that have happened, because the things that I did in South Dakota, the things like being head of the ASTA, the American String Teachers Association in South Dakota for 2 terms, where I was the only black man, but my peers were. They understood, my passion. They understood what I was doing to the orchestra program in South Dakota, and they were totally behind me on that for my passion. And the book, when you read the book, you will have just stories about the athletics, or stories about kids that had to be motivated in certain things. There's different trips. I took kids from Stockholm, Sweden, to London, to Greece, to France. I took kids all over the place to give them opportunity to see what the world is about. Witness.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So, are there any other things that you would like the reader to know about, as because this is promote Black authors and you would be the one that is selling your book to the audience? What is something that you're like, if you get this book, I know this is the one thing that you'll walk away with, um, that will add to your life?
You'll understand. You'll be reading about a man who had 2 things that moved him through life. Number one, it's judged by the content of my character, not by the color of my skin, and also PMA. I'm one of the most positive men that you will ever meet. And these are things I instilled in my students, their traits, and instilled in my family. And now my wife and I, we have 6 grandkids, ages 8 down to 4 months, and none of the grandkids know anything about my background as a conductor and my passion
Wow.
for that. But I have a legacy that I'm leaving for my grandkids. Number one, I have a YouTube channel with 97 classical conducting videos on it. That will always be there for my grandkids. And the other thing is, as an author, as you know, you need a publishing name, right?
Yes.
My publishing name is Limon, and that's spelled capital Leemon. What that stands for is the L is for Lillian, the E is for Owen, the E is for Emmett, the M is for Madison, the O is for Ophelia, and the N is for Nora. Those are the initials of my grandkids. So on every book, Lamont will be my grandkid's name on my book. Now, my kids will say, well, Dad, what'll happen if you have another grandchild? I said, well, that's easy. Their name's got to be Sam or Sarah. And then we just put the S at the end of it and keep going.
I totally get that. So, my last question is, what advice would you give aspiring conductors, musicians, authors, um, people that are like you, because that's what you are trying to create and make sure that people identify that, hey, there's people like me. What is some advice you would give to them?
If you have a passion, stick with your passion, regardless of how it looks, regardless of color, race, whatever that is. If that's your passion, I go back to Norman Vincent Peale. What the mind of man can conceive and believe, then you can achieve. I always go back to that because that's something very important. And I also, in the afternoons, I do motivational speeches in schools. I go into the schools, I talk to high school kids, grade school kids, and I tell them straight up that the American dream is still alive. As a minority, do we have to work harder? Absolutely. Absolutely. But what's the harm in trying to work hard and achieve your goal than never trying and never achieving it?
Wow. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to discuss your book, Mr. Phil Scales. We're excited to learn so much more about They Call Me Mr. Scales and your journey as an author. So please check him out at promoteblackauthors.com. And we appreciate you. Everyone have an amazing day.